Hello, welcome to the Career Discovery podcast. On the show today, we'll be learning about our guests' area of expertise, their career journey, and what they wish they'd known when they were just starting out. Thanks so much for watching. We really hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Barbara. Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hey, Jo. So good to be here and so good to be talking to you.
Fantastic. Well, why don't you kick off by giving us a little overview of who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing it for?
So I'm Barbara Gottardi. I define myself as a CIO by background. I grew up in Italy, moved to the UK 20 years ago. I spent 16 years at HSBC covering different roles, and more lately as a CIO for retail business banking and channels. And I moved to Vanguard, where I was the CIO for Europe for over a year. And in the last year, I've gone independent and I've been doing some digital transformation consultancy for small FinTech and for Admiral Money in Cardiff.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And outside work, I've got two boys, so I'm married to an English husband, and I've got two boys, 13 and 15. So I've got the joy of teenagers.
I'm sure it's very entertaining.
For them, more than for me, probably, but yeah.
Okay, so this is a podcast. So I like to ask guests what they're listening to right now. So can you share with us what you're enjoying right now?
So I've got two favorite podcasts. One is Live Lessons from Sport and Beyond from someone called Simon Mundy. And it does interview sport personalities or psychologists. And the idea is sport is a bit of a metaphor for life. And then the second one is the High Performance Podcast with Damian Hughes and Jake Humphrey.
Yeah.
And I've also met them, so it's quite special.
Oh, brilliant. I'm not familiar with the first one, but I'm a listener of the second one. So, and agree, it's a really great podcast. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's move on to your area of expertise, CIO, so Chief Information Officer. So there's always misconceptions about what we do in our roles. So I'd love to know what, your friends and family who are outside of the industry think you're doing all day.
So that's a really good question. I think my mum still has no idea what I'm doing. Every time I used to go back to Italy, they just thought I worked for a bank, so I could solve all their branch issues and any bank issue potentially arise. So I've kind of stopped trying to explain what I do. My kids think I just argue with people over the video, over the phone. So... But I think for me, a lot of what I do, it's even if it's Chief Information Officer, so you do run a technology team, you do try and deliver technology solution to the business and to the customer, actually. But a lot of what I do, I'd say, is about people. It's managing the people, be the connector between business and technology, and making sure that things happen the way they should happen, make sure the customer is always on the forefront of the thinking and things are done the way they should be done, within budget and so forth.
Great, thank you. And you've spent the majority of your career in financial services. So can you talk to us about the industry and give us a short overview of what it's all about? So banking, financial industry, I think it's fair to say that if we did a survey, probably they've got a really bad reputation. If you work on the financial industry, you're one of the bad guys. And I think, a lot of things bad have happened. But I think there's also so many good stories around it. By complete coincidence, last night I was at a talk of Anne Borden, who was this amazing woman who founded Starling Bank, and the way she's done it, I think is phenomenal. So I think if I compare many
few years ago, the banking were this massive institution that, we're going through a tough time, and then all the FinTech and technology were taking over the role. I think, 10 years on, 15 years on, it's quite clear that the banking industry is quite solid. And I think that the banks, especially the historical one, got good, solid balance sheet to survive. But they've learned that they can't do everything internal. So from a technology perspective, actually FinTech are there to partner with. And I think that's the opportunities. But it's always trying to do the right things. And if we keep the customer in mind and trying to do the right thing for the customer, that's the right way of thinking, and that's the right way of thinking of the financial industry.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes ego gets in the way, or other, financial gains, and that's the trick. But that's not only on the financial industry. I think that's a common track across all the other industries as well.
Yeah. And hopefully that's the minority rather than the masses.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what do organizations rely on their technology departments for those that might not be in the know?
I'd say pretty much everything, unless you go and just still use pen and paper. So if you think an organization, and if you think post-COVID especially, now many banks and even financial institutions have got an app, so you can interact to your bank as an app. You can see the balance, you can transfer money, you can do investment, and all of that is technology.
Yeah.
You want to try and talk to someone and you don't want to go in a branch, you need to call the contact center. All of that relies on technology infrastructure and all of that. Even if you want to do a chat, you still need to chat through technology infrastructure. And even if you're an employee and a person that works for this organization, you need a laptop, you need your emails, you need all, access all the systems where all your information are. So I think the technology front to back is fairly complex and it's fairly big.
Yeah, and fairly critical.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So if we were to zoom in to an average day or week in your life, what activities would we find you doing in that CIO role?
So a lot of meetings, and I think during lockdown, probably only meeting because that was the only way to interact with people. I think with life going back to semi-normal and back in the office, I think there's more time for, meeting, but more kind of brainstorming and, talking about things. So I think during the week you have a certain meeting which are called governance meetings. So meetings that are there to inform stakeholder or senior manager. It could be around risk management, could be about a project, or could be about some kind of strategy meeting. And then the other time is make sure you engage with the team and with the people, often on a one-to-one basis, just to make sure they're okay and make sure they've got the right support, they feel supported. You do also understand what really goes on. Sometimes in big meeting is really hard, and in Zoom or Teams is even harder. You've got people who've got different personalities. Some people feel absolutely comfortable in talking and probably talking too much over other people. But sometimes it's the people that are not vocal that actually really know what's going on and probably got the best ideas. So trying to balance all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and especially I think we've learned that with COVID, to also find the right balance for breaking the kind of meetings and the working. Personally, I really love my sport and my running, and I found that when I take a break and go for a run, I can clear my head, and things that seemed complicated becomes easier, and all of a sudden things become clear. So that's that. I think what's most exciting is probably meeting when we talk about talent, when we talk about customer initiative and all of that. And if I need to be very honest, the least exciting is when we talk about risk and issues and all of that. But of course, it's gotta be done.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes with the territory.
Helps when you kind of break through the traditional organizational structure, which is probably you have your different business department and your different technology department, and you kind of organize them following a customer journey or what a customer would do to take one of your product or benefit of one of the features that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was, I guess, really impressed how we saw that transformation in a recent organisation I worked at, where, you know, the product team were working with the technology team who were working with the business, and then you know, the compliance, legal, and it was all in lockstep together to drive those outcomes.
Absolutely, and I think, I mean, if people can get that, that's absolutely the way it should be. And for some people, they've done technology project, they've gone wrong, you know, that you get towards the go live date and all of a sudden compliance become an issue, legal become an issue, and you start blaming these departments. The issue is these people should have been involved way at the beginning, at the inception, so they can tell you what to think about, what needs to be in place, and they've got all the time to make sure that this is done properly. So if you have what we call real cross-functional team from the beginning, and everyone is clear on the objective, the aim, that's, I think, is the most successful, or you've got much more chances to deliver on time and on budget what you want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in the role of CIO, you're leading big teams, and those teams might be responsible for doing different things. So can you kind of talk about the types of people that you're leading and what kind of roles they're doing, please?
Yeah. So there's different teams that look after, if you want, your network and your infrastructure. So there would be people and the assets as well. So they could be your technical support to look after the laptops, the emails, and access to the different systems. Then you can have a team that look after the infrastructure that are needed to deliver solution to customers. So it could be your back office system, or your record keeping system, or your marketing system, or your website. And then you have people that look after technology risk. So they are still in the technology team, but they'll make sure that everything is built is fit for purpose according to certain guidelines, and make sure that what you deliver is secure and protected. You have people that are responsible for what we call a UI UX, so the design of what a product would look like and what the customer eventually sees. You have teams that maybe are responsible for the integration, and they build integration between different systems. You have architect, we call them technology architect, and there's this level. You have the enterprise architect, which looks at the overall kind of end-to-end architecture, what it should look like. And you have solution architects that go down more into the details of an application and the connection and how to build that. And of course, you've got all the engineering with different skills depending on the technology that they code and they help delivering some of these solutions. And I'm sure there are many more. There's also what we call business analysts that help actually defining the user stories and the details, so then the developers can actually code. So I think when we say technology, especially when we talk to people at university or coming out of university, they think, I want to do technology, but I don't want to code every day. And I think the world is so changed. And I think with digital transformation, there's so many roles there. If you want to code every day, there's a role for you. If you don't want to code every day, there's a role for you. And the key roles, which I think are massively underestimated in the digital and technology, are role of product owners, which are people that truly understand the product delivered to customer, but can also understand technology language and can be the conduit between the two.
Wow. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. And I know in the past, I've often been confused around the job title. So you might hear of a chief information officer, but you also might hear of a chief technology officer. Is there a, what's the key difference between those two roles?
So one is the title, I think, but I think you're right. I do think it depends on the organization and what. For me, a CTO or a chief technology officer is actually someone quite technical that look after all the engineering, potentially the architecture as well. And he kind of owns all the technology, if you want, teams. Usually a CTO would report into a CIO, and the CIO has got kind of a broader role facing the business, be a bit of conduit, probably not too detailed into the technology solution or data, but still have an understanding.
Yeah.
But certain organization and certain people actually have got skills that could be across the two, and maybe because the size of the organization can't really justify a CIO and a CTO, you can actually merge the two and decide to call it one or the other. I think it does, in big organization, and if I think of, I don't know, where I work, HSBC for sure, or Vanguard, definitely you need a CIO and a CTO, and a CIO is quite a big role that span across. And it does include also looking after all the budget, financials, and risk and technology risk and all of that, while the CTO is much more specific onto more the technology delivery and organization on that.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And one other question that I just wanted to touch on. I'm sure some of the audience would have heard about new ways of working and waterfall and agile and all these kinds of words. Can you help us have a little more clarity around what that is, please?
So again, it's I think for me it's really important that we understand what we mean and what we need to do. I think there's a bit of a misconception that in the past we used to do waterfall projects, and it means you go out, you gather the requirements, you build, you test, you deliver, and you go live, and it takes some time. But what we now call new ways of working is where actually you can deliver things in a much quicker time. So you've got this smaller team, cross-functional team, where you do create user story, you have a backlog, and you deliver things every 2, 3, 4 weeks sprint, and is much quicker. Now, it's not one or the other. I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. And it's not that one is old school and one is new school. I think in certain projects, you still will always have to do on a waterfall project. So you can do a replacement of a back office systems, for example, where, all your customer information, all your payments, all your information, and you kind of decide how to build day by day. You need to make sure you've got a clear plan, know exactly how it needs to work, and then you kind of develop and go live. But there's other things where you can agree what a product would look like, and we call it MVP, so the minimum viable product. What are those features that needs to be live for a customer, for someone, for a consumer to be able to use that? And from there, you can do add-ons, and that's what should be the agile. So you go live with something, you test it with the customer, and you then decide what the next feature could be. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so tell us what you love most about your job.
I love seeing the bigger picture, being able to connect people, and solving problems, seeing things that looked huge problems and people panic, and being able to break it down into chunks and actually distribute the work across different people. And also building the teams. I think a lot, yes, it's about technology, but technology is still people driven. And I think if you get the right people working in the right environment, and they'll thrive. And for me, seeing that is almost more, it's definitely more rewarding than seeing a product go live into the world.
Yeah, thank you. And what about the most challenging parts of your role?
That's probably the same, is dealing with people. And I always say technology is easy and people are hard. So it's good when you build good team and people, you work with people. But sometimes it's really hard because people are different. They've got different views and come with different background, and some personalities don't go along. And sometimes, the direction of travel that the company wants to go is not the one you want to go. And, I had to learn a lot on, what the company should be doing, but sometimes you're missing why they want to do. So giving options is something that is quite powerful, and I've learned to do. And sometimes when you tell people option one is you do nothing, which sounds really silly, is actually quite powerful as an option to see we could do nothing, or we could do this, or we could do something else completely extreme. And then the middle option becomes quite attractive after all.
Good strategy. So when you look back at the work you're doing and the role you've played as CIO, what are you most proud of?
So I think the best project I've done is probably my kids. So that's that's the one I'm proudest with. But from a CIO perspective, I definitely the role in retail business banking in HSBC. It was a new proposition. I took the role in March and I only had one person, and I had a team by the summer. And the way it was built, it was properly a team, people that came together, and it felt like a family. And I think there was a brilliant leader in the business. And we really kind of created the team from scratch, and we did a lot of kind of team building to get to know each other. And this week I met with a couple of people that I haven't seen for some time, and the bond is there, and he's still there, and I think it's something really special. And I'll always look back in with great fond memories. And I've learned a lot. I've learned really, really a lot.
Oh, great. And on the subject of teams, what for you makes a great team?
So I think it's definitely the team attitude and the people. I think once the people work together and kind of put the other team first and the team member first, I think that's how it works. If they want to succeed as individual, that's when it doesn't work. And if they really stick to their job description, then it doesn't work. If one of them fail, they all fail, so they can step in. And if someone succeed, they all succeed. I think that's the real key thing.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, let's move on to your journey. So I'd like to go way back to the beginning, Barbara. When you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a basketball player.
Ah, tell us more.
I started playing basketball probably when I was 6. And I've had a lot of, times where didn't want to play anymore, and everyone was bigger than me and was taller than me, and they never gave me the ball. And my mum was really tough. I mean, she really dragged me to play. And then when I was maybe 13, I got to go and play for Benetton Basket, which was quite a big thing. And it was 20 minutes train from where I was, and ended up playing there. And then I got to what you call probably second division. And then I just needed to choose between that and university. And I chickened out and went to university. So.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that you played basketball. That's incredible. Do you still play now?
Unfortunately, here in the UK, they're all very much for netball, which I don't quite get. So, but when we go to Italy and we've got a ball and we've got down to the court, so I've told my kids a bit. It's probably the only thing I'm still a bit better than them. Yeah.
So you go off to university, and what are you thinking about, that might lie ahead for you career-wise at that point?
So, do you know what? It's a really hot topic in our family at the moment. My oldest one is going through GCSE at the moment. And the amount of resources and opportunity and people talking to them about what careers they're like there and what's that is something I'm so jealous, because we didn't have any of that. And I think for me, I lost my dad when I was 15, and my mum was a nurse, and she was brilliant. She took us around, she took me around to speak to different people to know what to do at university. But I didn't have a clue. So I went for economics at the end, and I studied in Venice, University of Venice. And the reason I went for it is because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I felt there was a good mix of everything. I could do maths, I could do economics, I could do statistics, I could do a bit of everything. So that's what I went for.
Yeah. And then, so you finish your economics degree, and what happens next?
And what happened next, I think it's quite daunting, where you go through school and I think that every year what's next for you, and then you finish university and you're like, and what's next? And there's nobody there telling you what you should do. And for me, it was a real, what am I going to do? And I remember saying to my mum, I have no idea what I want to do. I don't want to be an accountant, and I probably don't want to work in Italy. So she had a friend who had a daughter in Dublin. And when I graduated, Dublin in Ireland was a bit, what they called it, the Celtic tiger, with big financial benefit for corporate to open there. And they were looking for people with different languages. So I decided to pack one luggage and left and went to Dublin. Slept in a hostel for a few days until I found a place to do. Printed off CVs. At that time, we still had physical paper CVs, and went around and knocked the door. And I actually started working in a call center. I was support for Visio on a call center, and I was doing Italian, French, and English. Just to be clear, I did study a modern language at high school, and I thought I could speak English, but when I landed in Dublin, I decided it was a totally different language that they were speaking there. So it was really hard. I remember going into meetings and understanding half of the stuff they were doing, and people said, "Oh, do you want to take the minutes next week?" And I'm like, "No." I'm just like surviving. But it was great. So it was great for me because I was independent, I was earning my money, I was paying for my flat, and that for me was the key thing.
Yeah.
It was good. It got me closer to technology. It made me realize I didn't want to do marketing, I didn't want to do that, but technologies had something that had a logic behind, and I really liked that. So from there, I then worked for a company called Peregrine System, and it was a software company. And I got into Siebel. That was a CRM database, and I got kind of specialized in that. And that was my entry into HSBC, because they were having an implementation of a Siebel project across the investment bank. So yeah, I stayed 2 years in Dublin, and then I moved to London. I thought it was on the way back for me, but I'm still here.
And that was a real brave move to do after uni. So, what did you learn from, I guess, taking the risk of moving to a new country, but also going door to door with your CV as we did in those days?
I look back and I think, I won't hide it, is I did cry over the phone to my mum, said that I was going to go back. And she was quite tough. She said, you don't go back unless you give it a good go, which, sounds harsh, but that was really helpful. And I think if you look back and you say you've done that, I think I've kind of learned that sometimes, if you take the easy, the easy decision or the easy road, it doesn't challenge yourself. But I think if you go for the most difficult one, you grow and you learn, and then you feel uncomfortable, but you learn to become comfortable feeling uncomfortable, because you're kind of growing. And I think I was listening to another podcast from Amanda Blank. She's the CEO of Aviva, and she said as well, she had an easy route and she always went for the difficult one. But once you've done it a couple of times, I think it kind of gives you the strength to know that you can do it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my advice to people is just go for it. And even if it's not what you want, you'll never know until you tried. I did, my first job was Visio customer support, and I knew I couldn't do that for long. And then in Peregrine, I started as a telemarketing, and I was like, well, I can't do this for long either. But at least I tried, and I knew what it meant, and I've learned new skills, and then you move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some great books on people who are, at the end of their lives, and they talk about regretting the things they didn't do rather than the things they did do. So I think that's something that's great to remember. If you're ever really scared to do something, just go for it. And like you say, if it isn't the perfect role, then actually, you've learned that that's not the perfect role, so you can move on to something else. So, okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's much better there than sitting there and think, oh, what if I'd done it? Yeah. I think you've tried, it wasn't for you, or maybe it was the best thing could have happened to you.
Yeah. All right. So you're now at HSBC in London. So talk to us about your journey in roles through HSBC.
So I joined the bank as a test manager. So I was a test manager for Siebel in the investment banking. And then I got promoted. I went for the project manager role. So I was leading the project, which then became a multiple projects. So you kind of grow into program managers. So that's within 2-3 years of being there. And then I went to maternity leave. So I had my first kid. And I came back, and one guy who was a fantastic manager bumped to me in the lift, and he said, "Oh, you're back. I've moved in asset management. I think I have a role for you." So, and I said, "I'd love to work for you." So I applied for the role as a program manager in asset management. And then I did that role, but moved into head of front office IT.
Yeah.
There. And I had my second kid as well there. And then when I came back, after 3 years I was in the role, I felt it's really tough being a working mum. So it's really tough to leave your kids at home and want to work. And for me, it was always that feeling guilty. So if I was at work, I had to do something where I was challenged, where I was making a difference. And I got to a point where it was kind of comfy and easy, and I felt I can't come to work and do this when I know I leave the kids at home. So there was a program called Aspiring COO. I applied for it. The role of a COO sounded quite interesting. And they gave me a role into the legal department, which I moved there for 2 years. It was really interesting. It was interesting to move from a front office IT where all the fund managers and people in the business wants to do everything with the press of a button into a legal department where everybody just know Word and they just want to print a document on one side of their desk. And it's just quite fascinating. But I've learned a lot of different things. It was, I learned a lot about how they work and how to be in a business and not in a function. And, again, you build up your network, you meet really lovely people that then can help you quite a lot. After 2 years in legal, they asked me if I wanted to go back in technology, and there was a role for a COO in the retail banking. So I did that. And again, it was interesting, learned a lot from a commercial perspective, from a numbers perspective, financial perspective. But again, after a year, you think, there's so much I can play around with a spreadsheet. I do really miss the delivery side and people. And that's where the role of retail business banking came up on CIO. So, but again, to that one, Joe, I did the mistake that I'm sure many people do. I read the job description and I start ticking what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I went to talk with an amazing person in HSBC who I'm still in touch, and he's a fantastic man. And I said, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. I read the job description. And he said to me, don't be such a woman. A man will never read the job description. I think you'd be good. Just go for it. And I went for it, and it probably was the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
At the same time, I picked up a different role, which was called Head of Service Sustainability. And for people that know, it was probably the worst project in the bank, because it's a thankless job to try and remediate all the systems. So you need to make sure that all systems are at the latest tech version, at the latest patch and all of that. So, and that's not the cool things that the business see any benefit, but it costs a lot of money. So again, it was a tough job, but it gave me a lot of visibility and I've learned a lot to deal with people. And that's where I then got the CIO for channels. So I was looking after all the ATM globally and all the contact center and the branch. And that's my journey in HSBC. And, the beauty with HSBC is the connection. So many teams and people across the globe that I now call friends, and we're still, thanks to WhatsApp and technology, still in touch. I had amazing people in India, in China, Hong Kong, and so forth. So I've learned a lot about the different cultures, and, there's some really amazing people.
Oh, that sounds brilliant. And I think you highlight a really a great point in that, when you're I guess in the early stage of your career, you are encouraged to move every couple of years to make sure that you're continuing to learn and develop and push yourself out of your comfort zone. But in some organizations, it's very possible to do those moves within the organization. You don't have to leave the organization to make that move or get that leap. And I think it's just really important that you're really open and honest with your leader about your aspirations and what you might like to try and do, because that organization would far rather have you in another department within their organization than lose you to a competitor.
Absolutely. I mean, you can go in a company and stay there forever. And if that's what you want to do, it's your choice. But I think if you want to learn and push yourself and do, yes, before looking around, it's much easier to change department, because I think you've got a set of company knowledge that you've got, and it'll give you a bit of confidence. you've got some skills that you've got, and it gives you a bit of confidence. And then is the unknown and the learning, which you're learning and then becomes more known. But absolutely, if you've got the opportunity, definitely.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings us to the CIO role, at Vanguard, and now the independent work.
Yeah, so Vanguard, I think they were very keen for me to join. They had a really good selling point. They wanted to kind of create a lot of change and be a kind of a Europe hub and very different. And it sounded really, sounded really interesting. And when I got there, I realized how much I learned at HSBC and how much more complex HSBC were. And I think, so Vanguard was great. And, being able to build a team, being able to quickly make a difference with the skills and the knowledge that I had before. Mm-hmm. And I think, in a year, I've changed more than they probably changed before. And to be fair, probably more that they could have handled with. So after a year, I think they've asked me to slow down a bit. And I think that was for me the deal breaker. I think, I was very clear why I joined and what I wanted to make a difference. And based on what we said before, my drive, my need to kind of make a difference and add value, just sitting back and go slowly didn't really sit with me. And I felt, I can do that. But there was a good kick as well to kind of say, okay, well, actually, I've learned a lot from HSBC, and I can see that a lot of the skills are reusable, and I can see that a lot of organizations go through the same challenge, and I can make change very quickly. So I could actually go into organization and help them with the change quite quickly. So that's what I did. And from January, I've been helping Admiral Money in their digital journey. And I've helped other people with smaller FinTech or smaller business to kind of come up with a strategy and make them think a bit more visionary. So it's been really interesting. And I've had more time to spend with my kids. So that was great.
Oh, that's really great. So looking back on the career journey, what have been the highs for you?
Well, definitely. I mean, HSBC is still on my heart. You can, even if you live in an organization, 16 years is a huge time, especially I grew up there. I had so many opportunities. The possibility of traveling across and getting to know new culture, I think that's invaluable. I think, being fortunate to have 2 kids and still being able to work. And I think, as you know, Joe, I'm super passionate for women to stay in the workforce. And I know some people don't want to, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to have kids, there's never a good time. Just go for it. And if you think you want to stay, there's so many opportunities now with parental share leaves, with share jobs. And so my strong advice would be make sure you keep a foot into the workforce, because you certainly never de-skill yourself. And I think stepping back and having kids, you actually acquire more skills than you could possibly imagine. But it's the confidence that goes, and that's quite hard to get back. So that would be that.
Yeah.
But I think, the amount of people I've met and the network that I have, I think that's very special to me.
Yeah. And what about the challenging parts of the journey, or perhaps a failure you had to overcome, or a limiting belief you had to overcome?
So when I say, everything was great, I think it's not all the time. I think I've worked for not many, but a couple of very challenging people. And I think if I look back, especially in one occasion, I was probably bullied, I think, but you don't realize while you're in it. And I think you can't quite see right, and you think it's your fault. And I think it's really important for people to always have a trusted mentor, guy, friend, someone to always bounce this thing through. I think probably the best thing that was suggested to me was to have a coach. And I had a lady called Annette, who I'm still in touch with, and I think after 10 years, so that's brilliant. And she helped me a lot in kind of seeing things in a different way. She gave me a lot of tips on how to channel my passion into a different ways on how to do it. But I think it's that perspective that, sometimes, you can call it passion, you can call it you really want to do the right thing, and you get so ingrained that you can't see any other ways. So stepping back and have that copter view and be able to see that, I think that's really important in a leader and kind of help put in perspective into things.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And actually, you just touched on a coach, but I'd really love to know about the importance that role models and mentors have had on your career journey.
So interesting. I never really quite thought a role model. But actually more recently, I think there's few women that you look, and Helena Morrissey or Anne Borden, oh my God, massive role model and all of that. Coach, as I said, I had Annette, I had her for a bit, and then kind of she helped me a lot, and then she came back for another bit. So, if you can, that's absolutely that. But I think a mentor, which is something I probably realized too late in life, that a mentor was a good thing to have. I think a mentor and a sponsor, which are probably two different things. And I think a mentor is someone you can go and talk to and bounce ideas and stuff. But even having a sponsor, which will be someone that advocates for you in an organization, I think is something really important. So, I mean, my suggestion now to people is just take all the help you can get. I think. Yeah. And even if people disagree and give you different things, that's good, because I think that's the perception that they have. But if they keep saying the same things, then maybe you do need to change. And it is not, perception could become reality.
Yeah, I think that some of us are afraid to ask for help, aren't we? Or afraid to reach out to somebody to ask them if they wouldn't mind having a conversation about something. And actually, it's 9 times out of 10, that person will respond positively. And often if they don't respond, it's just because they're too busy or haven't got time right now. So I think don't be afraid to ask the question. You're very likely to get a positive response.
So a lot of people that have worked for me in HSBC know that I used to say, and I think I always say, ask for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of maturity. Yeah. And sounds cheesy, but I think especially for certain cultures I was working with, raising an issue can be seen as you can't do your job. And the thing is, in a team environment, in a tech environment, the sooner you raise a problem, the sooner people will step in and help you. And that's essentially in a team effort. But I think, if you're a leader, if you work across countries and things, be aware that it's really hard for certain culture to actually admit there is a problem. But even, if you're talking about senior manager, I think they'll respect you more if you're clear and you raise something ahead and last minute because you've got time to fix. Yeah. It's like when I tell my kids that they should have their kit ready the night before, because if they haven't got anything washed, we've got time, and not 5 minutes before we need to leave in the car.
Yeah, I think it's about communicating, isn't it? Communicating on time. It will just make it will mean for less of a problem down the line. And also we talk a lot about failing fast in organizations, and especially in technology, and you'll know better than me, Barbara, but it's about, well, the faster we fail, the faster we can fix it and pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So for somebody who's thinking that they might like to pursue a career in technology, are there any, I guess, helpful or essential educations or trainings they should be thinking of?
So I think good sense of pragmatism. I think they should introduce courses on pragmatism. I think, having a good grasp of any logic, so mathematics and, basic computer skills is really important. But I'd say, and especially I'd say, if you're a boy or a guy, listening versus a girl, technology is always seen as a boy's job, and it's not. There's so many jobs, and we need more people in the technology environment. We need more women. We need more, and I don't want to stereotype because it's horrible, but sometimes girls and women can better see the bigger picture, and they're very logical, so they're really good on solving problems. But I think the key thing is true diversity, and it's not just men and women. It's about diverse of thinking, the background you came up, the way you see things. And the more diverse is the team, the more they can better represent the end customer. So I think the message for me in technology, don't think it's only Google or it's only AWS, Amazon, and it's only like pure coding. There's so much more about technology. Is interacting with people, is understanding the customer views, understanding the integration across. I think it's fascinating. I think there's so much to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of opportunities, like you say, and if there is somebody that wants to code all day, there's something for them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to code, there'll be something for you too. What about the softer skills? What softer skills tend to make the team members in technology successful?
Empathy. I know it sounds, but I think that's what it is. I think if you treating people with respect, understand where they're coming from, understand, their view. And I don't know if we were talking about the podcast. There's one on the High Performance podcast, and they were interviewing the coach that was at Brighton and now at Newcastle. And for him, it's not just about coaching the footballers, it's about getting to know them personally. They've got a wife, they've got kids, and they've got that. And I think, we underestimate that at work. And I know some people say, well, it's work, it's not family. But you spend so much time at work that sometimes it becomes blended. Yeah. So I think for me, a great leader has a great team, but the team, you need to know your team. And if you know the team and if you're there for them, they'll do everything for you. If you do command and control and expect them to jump when you need it, I think forget it. It's just they're never going to stay.
Yeah. And what soft skills are important for members of the team? And I'm thinking things like communication and collaboration.
Yeah, definitely. But I think as well, be aware that everyone is different. So trying to find out about what make someone tick and what they're good at and how you can leverage or learn from. I think sometimes we make the mistake of assuming that, but he or she, it's not very loud, or she doesn't say very much, or he doesn't say very much. And, this is when you do performance review and calibrate, this is things that I've heard. And, let's not judge people for what they look like or how they, if they say something or they don't say, because everyone has something different. I'd say if you're a leader, get your team to understand how to help each other and what strength and weakness people have, and try and pair up people. And sometimes I think there can be conflict, but sometimes I've noticed it's just a potential misunderstanding. And if you knock them down on the head fairly quickly and you get two people to understand where they're coming from. And I think one of the things that someone said, one of the ex-CEO in HSBC said is, if you tell people how they made you feel, there's nobody can argue with that. And I think it's such a powerful thing because people don't know what to answer. So it's not you said and he said, you said this. But if you say, what you said made me feel like this, then actually you might get a different outcome. And he said, I didn't mean that. Something happened at home or something happened there and I was not in a good space. But if you don't address this, people can escalate in their head and become something that never really happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Because I think you talk to, the power of diverse teams and actually, those teams communicating with each other, understanding each other, having empathy with each other, that then makes the collaboration more powerful.
It does, because in technology, let's face it, it's so easy for things to go wrong. And if every time things go wrong, someone is going to finger point at someone else, then it's a disaster and nothing really happened. If things go wrong, but there's an open culture, someone will step in and help, and someone is going to learn and you move forward. And it's just a different result.
Yeah. Thank you. So tell us about the future of technology. In terms of careers in technology, what do you see as the future? There's so much out there. I think there's a lot of people that want to become entrepreneur, and there's a lot of FinTech coming up. There's a lot of great ideas. So I'd say, as I said at the beginning, I think in the financial industry, banks and institutions are learning to better partner up with FinTech. And I think that's something that should really happen. I think there's much more we can do from a data perspective. So I think data is really important because we've got so much data out there. But the key thing is we need to make sure we use it properly because it could be a double-edged sword. So we talk about AI. Again, I think there's a bit of a misconception that technology is going to take people's job away. Maybe, but I think the jobs will evolve. The jobs we're doing is not the jobs that were available 20, 30 years ago. And so it will be different for our kids. So I think it's there. Jury's out about metaverse. Yeah, I think, and definitely I think blockchain is making a huge difference. And I think if you use properly, there's a lot more we can do from a technology perspective. I think collaboration, and I think what I'm hoping is going to do is people get together with technology and is used for the right purpose, because I think there's a lot more we can do, especially in not just in the financial. I think in the financial industry, we should do more for true diversity and inclusion and protect people that don't have the means or the knowledge about that, and make sure we can teach that from a younger age. But also we've seen the NHS collapsing quite quickly when COVID hit. So if we could do more on that, because there's a scarce, doctors and nurses, I think use technology for the good. I think there's a lot more we could do. Yeah. In the press at the moment, there's lots of talk about the cost of living crisis and the recession that's coming, and we're seeing those big tech firms laying off lots of people. What would you say to anyone who is maybe feeling a bit frightened about pursuing a career in technology if they've read those articles?
Again, a lot of the jobs will require technology skills. So I think there's so many opportunity, and a lot of the skills are transferable. I think it's great skills to have, and they'll be there for a long time. And once you've learned one coding language, to learn another one is not very difficult. And I think, we were talking to my 15-year-old as well, and someone said, you need to pick something where you learn to learn, because I think even the jobs that are out there now won't be the same when you go to work in, 8-10 years. So something like that. And I think technology does give you that, does give you the flexibility, a different way of thinking and see things. So, yeah, I think it's a good area to go.
Yeah. Great. And where would you suggest people go if they want to find out more? Perhaps some online resources or?
Gosh, there's so much out there, and I think it depends a bit what they want to do. But I think different things. There's a lot of charity and there's a lot of courses that do offer courses. I mean, if you're a girl and want to go in STEM, there's so much out there to get you out there. I think even if you look at between AWS and Google, they do so many courses. And I mean, just ask people. And I think there's a lot of people that will be just super happy to direct you into the right place or help. And I think there's a lot of free stuff out there. Yeah. I'm sure if you ask my kids, just say to go YouTube and everything is there, or in TikTok, and they're probably right.
Well, I can vouch for YouTube because I've learned how to build a website, how to launch a podcast, and how to edit videos, amongst other things.
Fantastic.
Okay, so as we move towards wrapping up, what do you know now, Barbara, that you wish your younger self had known?
I wish probably to know that sometimes you go through tough patches, and I think you have to go through, but I think you can come out much stronger. But I wish someone told me. I wish someone had told me and be there and kind of for me. I also probably wish that someone told me, just to be more patient and just give me some more direction instead of having to find it myself. But yeah, I think probably that's the kind of two things.
Yeah. And what would you say to young Barbara who chickened out of being a basketball player?
Maybe I should have done that, actually. I'd say I probably should have. I left some opportunity go, and I think going back, I probably would have grabbed them more. So definitely what I'm saying to people, just go for it. I think I should have said go for it. And maybe be a bit more patient as well at the same time, which sounds conflicting, but I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah. Now, Barbara, I love a quote. Do you have a favourite quote or inspirational expression?
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
And I think sometimes, especially people, what if no, what about? Just go for it, ask. The worst people can say is no, but at least you know where you stand.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast and the guest was talking about all you need is 10 seconds of bravery. You need, 10 seconds to press send on that email. You need, 10 seconds to press send on that WhatsApp message or whatever it is. And then it's done. And you might have a great outcome. And rather than thinking, what's the worst that can happen, what's the best that can happen? And actually that might happen and it might be amazing. So.
Yeah, and someone said something similar yesterday from the Malcolm Glad book about if something, I'm not going to do justice to it, but the idea is if something looks immovable and you can't move, just be sure that there is one tiny point that you just need to push and the thing is going to tip. And it's that kind of thing. So I think, you can just give it a go.
Yeah. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. This has been really helpful. And I think that for those people that, you know, might not realise how broad and how diverse technology is as a career path, this is going to be really helpful for them. And I know that, you know, like me, they'll be really inspired by your journey and your advice that you've shared today. So thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
So I'd say, just remember as well, nobody gives you anything for free. And I think you do need to earn people's trust and respect. So as I say, be true to your value. Even I can tell you, you will be challenged and it will be hard. But I think in the longer run, you'll really be recognized. So yeah, no pain, no gain, they say. But I think, and again, if you don't try, you'll never know. So just go for it and try and find a sounding board, find a mentor, find someone to give you that courage to just go for it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Barbara. This has been great.
Thank you, Jo.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you gained any value out of today's episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, we would love your feedback. Please use the links in the show notes to get in touch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.